Welcome to the Catholic Table Talk podcast. This is where everything Catholic is on the table. New episodes Thursdays at 9 a.m. Eastern on most podcast platforms. Here's your host, William Sauber.
This one I've been waiting to do for a very long time. Paul List and his book Moat Doom, Tolkien's Code Cracked. And just a little bit about today's episode. We're going to talk about what the Lord of the Rings, really what Tolkien's code is, and how does that refer to AI, as well as kind of the society today and the way we are trending. And is very, and also he really makes a good point of talking through each of the characters in the Lord of the Rings, about what they stand for, who they're supposed to be, the vices and all that stuff, the Latin Mass, all that stuff. So that's what I really enjoy. To be honest, Lord of the Rings, I fell in love with it about almost a year ago. Never read the books, only watched the movies, and really, truly, really great series if you have not watched it. I'm sure you've heard of it, but if you have not watched it, please do so. I'm sure if you have heard of it, that's why you're probably tuning in today's episode. So, a little bit about Paul List. Self-educated with a focus on scholastic philosophy and Christian theology, Paul List has been on a variety of shows, including, most recently, The Glenn Beck Show, to share Tolkien's relevant prophecy about the greatest threat to humanity, idolatry and slavery as a result of over-reliance on digital machinery and artificial intelligence. Again, I feel bad when we record because I felt like we didn't get really stressed his book enough. But again, the links are down below. At least most of them hopefully should be. His Moat Doom, the prophecy of Tolkien revealed, Tolkien's Code Cracked. You find the book down in the show notes below. So, without further ado, here is right away Paul List talking about The Lord of the Rings and Moat Doom. So, without further ado, let's welcome on to the show Mr. Paul List. So, Paul, thank you for accepting just the invite from Krista, and thank you for coming on today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, William. I look forward to chatting with you.
Awesome, absolutely. And like I said before we came on, it's like just the Lord of the Rings. I haven't been a fan for long, in Tolkien's work, but the more I watch, the more I study or look at it, and the more I really truly like it. So I'm interested about your book, Moat Doom, the prophecy of Tolkien's revealed. So just give us a little bit of background about your interest in Tolkien's work.
I've always been a huge fan of the Tolkien books. Like I was talking to you earlier, the three first Lord of the Rings movies, Fellowship of the Ring, Two Towers, and Return of the King, were amazingly well done, well produced. They captured the flavor of the mythology really well, and the score was excellent. And I can't knock them for the acting and the directing, but they changed a lot of stuff, and they left a lot of stuff out. So really, don't judge the book by the movie. That's for sure, because the book is so much better, and it's so far superior, both spiritually and intellectually, to anything like Harry Potter, or even Narnia, or even the space trilogy of C.S. Lewis. They're all great, but by far, head and shoulders above the rest is the Tolkien mythology. And I really think that you really real Tolkien readers, real Tolkien fans, of course, have start with The Hobbit, read The Lord of the Rings, and then go back and read the history and the whole background behind it, called the Silmarillion. And that's an amazing edition. And you can't really understand fully what's going on unless you read the Silmarillion. And honestly, you can't really understand what's really going on till you read my book. So I reveal all the secrets, all the enigma, everything that people have always wondered about and tried to guess at, and they've never come to any realization, any conclusion, like the identity of Tom Bombadil and his wife Goldberry. That's all explored. That's all answered very clearly in the book. We can get into some of that if you like.
Sure. I do want to ask Paul, like I always do with any author I bring on the show. I just kind of want to talk about like I know I just asked your interest in Tolkien's work, but what really maybe I'm jumping the gun like I usually do so often on the show
That's
with the
okay.
author, but what really led you to write the book, and then what was like your your motivation to continue the book? Because maybe you thought this is great, I want to do a book on this, but then like we all do, I've thought about this on the podcast. Is like, should I keep it going? Should I continue? There's maybe more cons you think than pros to continuing the book. So what really made you sit down and start writing it, and then what really kept you going?
I have to say that in all questions, it was God's hand, firm hand on my shoulder, and His holy foot right on my backside, making sure that I got this done. I had a very powerful outer body vision. It was a transcendental experience back in like 1995, and then it was very it was a big deal, although I wasn't really surprised because I've experienced things similar to that in my life before. And then He put a holy fear in me to read, and I read diligently for probably 25 years in the scholastic tradition of philosophy, which is the true philosophy of the Catholic Church, Christendom, starting with, we'll say, with Plato through Aristotle, and then through the doctors and fathers of the church, and then all the way up to really the apex, which is Thomas Aquinas. So I gave myself a scholastic education. I've always been a huge fan of Tolkien's mythology from a very young age, when my parents used to read the books to us back in my childhood, in my family, 6 kids. And it left a huge impression on all of us. And I always knew that there's something going on here that is not obvious on the top, but there's something really deep going on. And then, so when I had given myself a scholastic education, part of my reading included encyclicals, a lot of papal encyclicals. And I read Leo XIII's wonderful encyclical, Aeterni Patris, where he's calling the West out of the errors of the Enlightenment philosophies because we're committing suicide. And he's calling us home, trying to get the West to return to Thomas Aquinas. And it hit me really hard that this is epic, like an epic Tolkien battle, at the gates of Gondor, practically. And so I opened up the Tolkien mythology again and started digging a little deeper, and lo and behold, with my scholastic education that I'd given myself, everything just became perfectly clear, exactly what was going on. It was truly Thomas Aquinas's substantial unity of the whole person, body and soul, versus Descartes' dualism. And then all the many other contests come in, like the contest between languages, the contest between the language of the machine, which is the One Ring, which is binary code, versus the language of the harmonic overtone series, which is the language of all motion, from which we draw our scales and key signatures and all the wonderful music that we've done. That's the law of, or the language of motion, the language of the natural world. Against that is the brutal language, ugly language of ones and zeros, the machine. And there's several other contests going on too. But the point of the mythology is to give a 25,000 foot view. Is really about the return of faith and reason, the reunification of faith and reason that had been divorced and pulled apart and separated, to the great injury of Christendom in the Enlightenment. And it's about the return of faith and reason coming back together, and that is Aragorn and Arwen. Aragorn is the natural king because he is high reason. And this is a psychological mythology. It doesn't happen out here in the world. It happens inside the mind. And so Middle Earth is the material brain, and the undying land across the sea is our immaterial intellect. And so Aragorn is the king because he's the king of the rational soul. He's high reason. And Arwen, Elrond's daughter, is the last of the daughters of faith. Men are reason, elves are faith, dwarves are scientific knowledge. And it's about the reunification and the re-wedding of Aragorn and Arwen, who are both happen to be descendants of Beren and Luthien from the first age. And it's about the reversion, about Christendom losing the faith, splitting into dualism, coming back, reverting back to the faith and destroying the ring, the language of the machine, and defeating the microchip in Mordor, which is the microchip in the cerebellum.
Right. Yeah. Wow. I never thought that way. Especially like you said, Middle Earth is your mind, your brain. That's truly true, I should say. And as well as faith and reason. I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, yeah, faith and reason has been pulled apart and continues being pulled apart. So wow, that is really cool and good for you. And like, totally agree with you. That is God's hand on you, looking you through that. So
Yeah. We can
definitely.
get into some of the characters. I think you'll get a kick out of it. Like, for instance, hobbits.
Yeah,
Hobbits are habits.
hobbits, right?
Hobbits are habits. The word habit is used 9 times in all of the mythology in the Lord of the Rings, and 8 of those times in one chapter. And that one chapter is the prologue called Concerning Hobbits.
Yeah.
And so that this is the realm of the habits, and Middle Earth is laid out according to the Victorian age pseudoscience called phrenology, where they had a picture of the skull and the head, and they had areas where they claimed they knew where all of our attributes come from, like the high reason and hate and fear and love and self-perfection and the imagination and all this stuff. So he used that as a map, and that is a map of Middle Earth. Middle Earth is the material brain. So the 4 hobbits that we know and love are the highest and the best habits, and those are called the cardinal virtues according to St. Thomas Aquinas. And the cardinal virtues are temperance, which is Frodo, fortitude, which is Sam, and then they're the interior, and then the exterior 2 are Pippin and Merry, and their prudence and justice, and they have to be developed in their service of the interior, so you don't become a virtue signaler. You're actually virtuous. So Frodo's temperance, Sam is fortitude, Pippin is prudence, and Merry is justice, and Gollum is intemperance. And that's why he calls Frodo master, because only temperance can master intemperance. And temperance moderates and controls and manages our lusts for physical pleasure. And with the ring, which by the way is 1s and 0s, it's binary code. With the ring, Gollum can slake all of his nasty, unruly desires on the computer. And Tolkien saw all this coming. And that's why Gollum calls Frodo master, not because he has the ring, but because he is temperance and he can master intemperance. So the mythology goes about with looking for the destruction of the ring. So if we want to get a little deeper, if you've only been familiar with the movies, you don't know anything about Tom Bombadil and Goldberry. Well, they were left out because nobody's ever figured out who they were. And so, of course, Peter Jackson and company didn't include them in the movie because it says it doesn't add anything to move the story or anything. And he just didn't see the point in putting it in there. Well, Tom Bombadil and Goldberry are the 2 most important characters of the whole mythology because it's about them. The whole mythology is about their fate. They are the transmigrated fallen spirits of the trees of light from the Silmarillion. Tom is Telperion. Goldberry is Laurelin. When the trees died, they gave out one last silver flower, one last golden fruit, and they became the fallen sun and the moon. And then Aule, one of the powers of the soul of growth, made for them new bodies, Tom and Goldberry's body. That's where Goldberry gets her name, by the way. The last fruit was a berry.
Really?
And so they're in a fallen state because the trees died because of Ungoliant, Shelob's mother, and Ungoliant is mortal sin. So they were restricted to the material. They were no longer in the Undying Land. They were restricted to the material realm, the animal realm, in their new bodies. So this is why Tom is the free will, and Goldberry is the rational intellect, which includes the conscience. So this is why Tom can do anything he wants, because he's the free will. He can even make the ring disappear, but he can't make it disappear forever because he needs to develop new habits. So the whole mythology is about Tom and Goldberry's destiny because they are the will and the intellect of this person, this representative person named Arda, within which is Middle Earth. And this representative person represents all of Christendom. So it's about, at this point of the destruction of the ring, this Arda, this person, this representative person, that represents all of Christendom has become microchipped, and it's become partly transhuman. The Tower of Barad-dûr with Sauron is AI, and the microchip is the Tower of Barad-dûr. The Black Riders are the agents of virtual reality. So when you put on the ring, you enter their realm. They can see you and you can see them. And that's why you start to fade from this world if you wear the ring too much. Just like we see kids and whatever with the goggles, they don't want anything to do with this world. They've committed themselves to the virtual realm, at least for a period of time. Hopefully they'll grow out of it, but I don't know. I don't know how likely that is. Where you put your attention is where you put your heart. And if you put your attention in the virtual realm rather than God's natural creation, you're a goner.
Yeah, truthfully are. No doubt about that.
Yeah.
So I do want to ask this question too, Paul. Just like, why was Tolkien like so secretive with his epic work? I mean, maybe it wasn't really so much him. Maybe it's just I just feel like a lot of people don't know about Tolkien. Everyone knows about C.S. Lewis, of course, right? Because he wasn't really, I mean, he was Christian, he was Catholic. But how come like Tolkien was so secretive with his work, which is really
well, there was no real danger of C.S. Lewis's work being squashed. He was Protestant, by the way, so he didn't suffer the consequences and the harassment of the anti-Catholic sentiment that was very heavy in the early 20th century, late 19th and early 20th century, and lasted for a long time. It was only, I think, 2013 when any of the royalty could marry a Catholic. You could marry a Jew, a Muslim, Martian, an atheist, but you couldn't marry a Catholic. Only in 2013, I think they changed that for Catherine Williams' wife. Anyway, Tolkien's work was very, very threatening to the powers, the Freemasonic, Illuminati, machine masters, our quote unquote betters of the elite that are here to enslave us. That's exactly what they're here to do. If the powers that be, the anti-Catholic powers and the Masonic powers, very anti-Catholic, very anti-human, if they had any inclination as to what the story was really about, they would have put all their effort into squashing it. And so Tolkien made sure that he told people, oh, it's not about anything. Don't worry about it. Don't try to make anything out of it. And by the way, I cordially dislike allegory, and it's just, it's just a story. He tried to really, really downplay it because he wanted it to, by God's plan and in God's time, soak into Western culture, Western civilization, all of the world by osmosis, not by force. And it's so good. It's so entertaining. It's so much fun and so rewarding to read that by God's grace, it did soak by osmosis into the whole world. And now hardly anybody does it unless they live on some savage island in the Philippines or something. Everybody knows something about J.R.R. Tolkien and the Lord of the Rings. So now at the right time in God's time, and I think J.R.R. Tolkien had faith that he knew that it would be revealed in time to meet the opponent that it was designed to meet. And that opponent is artificial intelligence and transhumanism and the surveillance state. All of these things that threaten in virtual reality, all these things that threaten to pull our souls into the alternative earthly realm and lose track of the heavenly, the city of God, so to say, to quote and point to Augustine. So Tolkien made sure that he kept his cards very close to his chest. I don't think he even revealed to his son Christopher his full scope of his intent for his work. Yeah, I don't think Christopher knew. So he was very careful. And the old saying, loose lips sink ships. That's true. He knew very well that, and he kept it to himself. And he knew that if he just wrote it and sent it out and left it in God's hands in God's time, God would pick somebody to figure it out. And that just happened to be. I know that sounds strange, but that's the truth.
That's true.
What else to say? It's take it or leave it. Once you read the book and you realize how everything lines up. I've had some doubters until they read the book, and then there's no denying that everything just absolutely fits perfectly. And the whole thing opens up. And if you thought the mythology was beautiful before, once you understand it for what it is, a real scholastic psychological saga for our time. The beauty is just exponentially greater than it was as just a story with where it was before. So we can talk about some more of the characters. For instance, we'll talk about the wizards, because everybody wants to know about, well, who's, what's going on with Gandalf and Saruman and these guys. The wizards are the 5 intellectual virtues according to Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics. They're how man acquires knowledge, and that is philosophic wisdom, and that's Gandalf; practical wisdom, which is Saruman; rational intuition, which is Radagast; and then the 2 blue wizards that keep going east, which is outside in the cosmology, not in the psychology anymore. They're art and science, and they're the outside virtues, and they don't play a part, but Tolkien takes into consideration. He accounts for them because he's very masterfully thorough and wants to make sure everything's accounted for and everything lines up in harmony and unison exactly the way that it should. No contradiction, and there's no contradiction in his mythology. So the wizards are the intellectual virtues. Gandalf is philosophical wisdom. Gandalf the Grey is pre-revelation, pre-Christian, pre-Christ philosophy, such as Plato and Aristotle. And he's gray because he's doubtful. He doesn't have revelation. He doesn't have the answers. But when he falls in the mines of Moria to the spirit of pride, academic pride, which is the Balrog. The Balrogs are spirits of pride. The one in Moria is the spirit of academic pride, and tries to take Gandalf down and subjects him to Darwinism. Durin's Bane. Durin is Darwin. And pulls him down into the body and shows him that you're just an animal. This is the philosophical wisdom of art of the person being subjected in college to Darwinism, trying to convert him and trying to make him understand and trying to convince him that he's just a modified, evolved monkey and nothing more. And Gandalf doesn't buy it and keeps on fighting and goes down into this digestive system. Down at the bottom, finds the bottom of the spinal cord, which is the endless stair, and follows the Balrog all the way to the top, pops out an eye at the top of the mountain, defeats the Balrog, and then Gandalf passes into a state of almost a hypostasis, kind of a dream state where he's brought back. He doesn't die. He's brought back by the eagles, and the eagles serve Manwë, and Manwë is the power of sight, and the eagles are all the good things that we read. So he's reading the holy works of, for instance, Aquinas and Augustine. These are eagles, and they brought him back, and he saves him, so he doesn't fall to Darwinism. And he comes back on the wings of the eagles. The eagles are always saving him. For instance, when the eagle saves him from the top of Orthanc, which is the blackened ivory tower, because Saruman has taken over academia. Practical wisdom has taken over academia, thanks to the Enlightenment. It's the eagle that comes and gets him and takes him and saves him. And again, that's from the good reading that Arda is doing. And against that, those eagles and the good reading are the bad reading, the bad things we take in through our eyes. For instance, those are the dragons, and the dragons are the spirit of defilement. And then later, it becomes the Black Riders, and the Black Riders are the agents of virtual reality.
Gotcha.
We take in through our eyes.
Okay, very, very good. Like I said, I know there's probably a lot of people who are, because a lot of people love Lord of the Rings, so there's a lot of people with more.
Got to read the books, William.
Yeah, I know. I'm not.
Don't count on the movies to do it for you, because they'll just, as well done, as fun as they were, they will definitely mislead you.
Gotcha. So I do want to ask the question that we were talking about before we came on air, Paul. Was, you said the Hobbit movies were really poor.
They were terrible.
Terrible. Thank you. Can you just elaborate for the audience on why?
Yeah, because they tried to make so much more out of so little. The Hobbit story is a very relatively short little tale. It was the entry for Tolkien to enter his realm and really work with his realm. And it's wonderfully written, but it's not that deep, and there's just not that much meat on the bone. And consequently, they just did it for money. They stretched it out to 3 movies that would have made one good movie. They stretched it out, and they added so much stuff that had nothing to do with the Hobbit story. And I literally went to watch it, and the first movie, I got up about halfway through, and I just couldn't take it anymore. I said, this is just total marketing. This is just awful. And I just walked out, and I never saw any of the rest of them. It was just dreadful. And I've seen bits and pieces since then, and it hasn't done anything to encourage me to maybe take a second look. I just, they were chasing money at that point. They had done much more than just chase money with the first three, although they missed the mark because they didn't understand the mythology any more than anybody else, even with their army of Tolkien experts. These Tolkien experts, they're all educated from, they have a Cartesian, a Descartes-based, Enlightenment-based education, an industrial education, not a scholastic education. So they could never see the truth behind what's really going on in the mythology. It takes a real scholastic scholar to really see what Tolkien did, because that's what he was. He was a real deeply Catholic, traditional Catholic, not this synodal heresy, frankly, that's coming out of the Vatican these days, which is really a new religion. And Tolkien saw this coming, and he pushed back as hard as he could. And one of the ways that he did that, perhaps the best way that he did that was his mythology. Traditional Catholics, real Catholics that love the true faith, 2,000-year-old, the true faith, the perpetuation of the sacrifice of Christ on the cross, still offering sacrifice to the Father for us and giving us his actual body and blood, not a symbol. We deeply appreciate what Tolkien did, and we have Tolkien on our side. He's on our side. We just need to bring him to the forefront, and little by little, with interviews like this, that's exactly what I'm trying to do, is bring him to the forefront. It's like having Gandalf show up at dawn when the battle looks bleak, and he shows up with, an army to come and save the day. And that's Tolkien. He's going to save the day. Once people realize what Tolkien actually gave us, the modernists that have commandeered the Curia, and I hate to say it, but the papacy for the last two popes, they're going to have to deal with J.R.R. Tolkien and the Tolkien community, and that's a very powerful bunch of people.
I can see that. I can just listen to you, and I mean, it's very, very intriguing to me. I know, like I said, of course, I'm very bad for doing this interview. I feel like, because I know not much about the Lord of the Rings, but just the way you're putting the pieces together, I see it lining up. And I haven't read the book yet. I haven't read any of the Lord of the Rings books yet. So, but I see it lining up. So, for your book, Paul, what is, I know the target audience, of course, is Lord of the Rings people, but also like any Catholic, right? And what like age level would you recommend having someone read it?
I mean, I hate to put a bottom end. There's no top end on age.
Right.
I hate to put a bottom end because there are some exceptional teenagers. Even the problem with reading works like this, everybody likes to say, "Oh yeah, I read the Lord of the Rings when I was 10 years old." It's like, yeah, okay, whatever. You read the words, so what? I'm not impressed. At 10 years old, your brain isn't even halfway developed, and you have no life experience, you have no wisdom, and you might be very clever, and you might be very smart, and they're pretty much the same thing. And you might also have the capacity for great intelligence. However, none of it's been really curated, none of it's been cultivated, and you're not in an age to read like that. So I would say probably because it takes it's very philosophical. There's a lot of history in the book. There's a lot of course, there's a lot of explanation of the mythology, and the mythology is very complicated and very rooted in philosophy. So, I mean, if you read it and you're 18 years old, you're going to get a lot out of it. If you read it when you're 35 years old, you're going to get a lot more out of it. And I've had quite a few very intelligent people, professors, even from college level professors, that have said, I can only read about 3 pages a day, and then I have to put it down and think about what I've read. It's a pretty heavy lift. The thing too is you got to work your way up to a certain degree before you tackle any book of any level of real of complexity. I'll say, for instance, anybody who can read can sit down and open up the Summa Theologia and start reading it.
Right.
They're not going to understand a darn thing. Maybe just a little snippet here and there, but you've got to really earn your place. You've got to do, it's like training. I'm going to say it's like you're going to do helicopter skiing off of Mount Everest.
Yeah.
You know, that's going to take you a long time to train to be at that level. You don't just come off the kiddie trail, at Jackson ski bowl, and you think you're ready to helicopter ski off of Mount Everest. You're going to get killed. And you won't get killed with Thomas Aquinas, but you'll get squashed. And so you really have to have gone through a certain level of deep preparation, which is going to have to understand and study Plato. You're going to have to really understand and study Aristotle, which in itself is a real commitment. You're going to really have to understand Augustine. You're going to have to really go through many of the church fathers and doctors, even some of the encyclicals from people, great popes like Gregory the Great, and some of these people, and then some church history too. So by the time you get to the point where maybe you could crack open the Contra Gentiles, for instance, not even the Summa, you've already got probably 10 or 12 years of pretty good study, unless you're a full-time student or you're a Trustafarian and you don't have to go to work, which I'm not. You're probably not either. But you don't watch TV. You don't waste your time. You don't watch football. You're not into that stuff. You're really devoted to your developing your education. And maybe after about 10 or 12 years like that, and you're really fairly fluid with Aristotle and Augustine in particular, then when you crack open the Summa Theologia, you've done two things, at least. You've developed your intellectual endurance so you can actually hang in there. Of course, you've read the Bible. Of course, you've read Josephus, Flavius Josephus. Of course, you've read many of these other things. I just picked a few things. Sorry, but you've read these things because Aristotle refers to them constantly. So by this, you've got the intellectual endurance to sit down for hours on end and read very heavy, philosophical, historic complexity and hold these ideas together in your head all at once to make connections with them. You have to be able to do that. And you can't do that without a lot of training. And I'll be honest, also a good deal of talent for it. You have to have a knack for it. Just like skiing. I don't care how much training you do. If you don't have a knack for skiing, you're wasting your time. But right. So you have to develop this intellectual endurance. And then you also have to understand and make these connections and understand these things. You have to understand what Aristotle was getting at in his metaphysics. You have to understand what he was getting at in his Nicomachean Ethics and in his De Anima on the Soul, or the Organon and the logical treatises, or rhetoric, or poetics, or on generation and corruption, or on dreams, or any of his wonderful works. And because Thomas Aquinas is always referring to these things. He's always making an argument against the question, the objections, using these things, and then on the contrary, and his refutation of the objections. Once he makes his answer, he refutes the objections. And so it's and my gosh, it's a lot of reading. I mean, it's the Summa, I would say, is going to take somebody, even after they've trained, I'm going to say it's going to take a couple of years. Anyway, yeah.
Okay.
So I don't know what brought that up, but you really have to. One of the things we have to do, William, is we have to reclaim our competency as human beings and stop letting and expecting the machine to do these things for us. I did a podcast the other day, and the really nice fellow, Rick Barrett, good Catholic, he said, I've always said that every convenience that we give over to the machine is one skill or one competent aspect of us that's lost. And it's so true. And we're selling out. We're outsourcing our humanity to the machine, and we're in for a huge. I fear, healthy fear, not a paralyzed fear, but a healthy fear. I'm very concerned that we're going to suffer a very poignant, lasting chastisement brought about by our own idolatry of the machine. We've made a machine in our own image that many people are worshiping. Many people are using it instead, think it's an alternative to God, with an alternative heaven in the virtual realm. And where we put our hearts is where we put our souls. And there's a lot of
Right.
people putting their hearts in something that doesn't even exist. The virtual realm doesn't exist. It's not a thing. It's not an extension into this three-dimensional realm. It's not alive. It's not even dead. It's just virtual. And a lot of people are selling their souls into that realm. And it's going to lead a lot of souls to hell, I fear.
I think that's a very, very valid point, Paul. And actually, I had a guest on the other day, or a few episodes ago now, Steve Picorni, and he said something pretty similar. He's
Yeah,
like, we touring all our stuff, even just looking stuff up on YouTube, where it's like, this is how you do it. This is all, hey, AI,
yeah,
how do you do this? You
yeah,
totally lose your human mind and state or whatever.
yeah,
You don't know how to do stuff. You just let the machine do it,
yeah.
and yeah, and
Well, I'd like to say too that I don't think there's anything wrong if you've got to fix your car and you don't
right,
know really where to start, and you go on YouTube and you've got some people there that are showing you, and then you can go out and do it on your own. I think that's actually very valuable.
okay,
I think that's a good use of the technology. When you start asking, I've never used artificial intelligence, and by God's grace, I hope to never do so in my life. And I suggest people don't use Grok and all these replacements for human relationships. And now we've got people falling in love with the machine, and now they've got sex bots out that are going to be a huge, devastating impact on the population.
they already
Um,
are.
they are now.
Yeah,
China's come out with a bot that actually can harbor and has a womb and have a baby. Well, of course, obviously you need the egg from the woman, and then the man has sex with this machine, and
crazy.
it's demonic,
Mm.
is what it is. We have to really understand that we are in a spiritual war. It's been going on since the fall of the angels, and the best thing we can do is make sure that we're aware that this contest between the good and the evil is a real thing. It's above us and far more real than we are, and we're caught up in it. And we have to make sure that we're paying attention, and we don't, even by ignorance or default, wind up participating in the demonic realm. And we need
Right.
to stay as close to Christ as possible, get right with the church, take advantage of the sacraments, especially confession before communion. We really have to get our souls right. I'll get you very interesting. I'd like to just let your readers know that the white tree of Gondor that can never be tended, it's left to die in the middle of the citadel. And it was Sauron in the Silmarillion, actually, or the Akalabeth, which is a different age, actually sacrificed one of the white trees on his unholy demonic altar to his boss, Melkor. Melkor is original sin, by the way. He's not Satan, he's original sin. This is for your readers that are deep into the mythology. But the white tree of Gondor that can't be tended, it can't be attended. And it is the TLM. It's the traditional Latin Mass. So when Aragorn and Arwen come back together and faith and reason are reunited, Gandalf this is the book, Gandalf and Aragorn, who's the rightful high king of the rational soul, high reason is, they go up behind the citadel, and where the snow on the mountain and where the snow is starting to recede, they find a sapling of the white tree, and they bring it back into the citadel and replant it. And that is the traditional Latin Mass. So when faith and reason come back together, the traditional Mass, the true sacrifice, not this, I'm sorry to say, not this Vatican II Novo Ordo Protestantized version that the hierarchy seems to be bent on destroying. And just like the white tree and the elf friends were persecuted, and we have to be prepared for persecution. We have to stand up and not be so willing to be obedient just because somebody holds an office. We can have deep respect for the office, but if an apostate or a heretic actually takes office, we have no obligation to follow them away from Christ. In fact, we have an obligation to hang on to Christ and call them out for what they are.
Right, absolutely. And that was pretty much what, at the time of recording, that was pretty much this past weekend's gospel. So it's going to be persecuted, and it's going to be people saying, follow me, this is what we're going to do.
Yeah.
And you don't. So that's spot on.
Yeah.
And I do have a couple of questions on couple other characters, but before we get to that, Paul, because I think your book is like fascinating. Again, I haven't read any Lord of the Rings books. I haven't read your book yet, but for like a book study or a book group, have you heard of those like starting up on your book, or would you recommend that?
Well, you see, I don't know. I get a lot of people say, "Oh, you need to make an audiobook so I can, listen to it in the car and whatever." But I'm self-employed and I'm pretty busy. I'm
Right.
probably going to take the winter off. I live in Vermont, but I'll winter at our property in Arizona this year. But in fact, I leave tomorrow for LA.
Really?
I've got an interview. I've got a doctor lady, a good Catholic, flying me out for an interview in LA, and then I'll fly back to Phoenix and I've got property up by Sedona. But so maybe I'll have a little bit more time. But I'm pretty busy, and I've done probably 80 or 85 interviews in the last couple of months, 3 months, maybe 3.5 months. So I've been pretty busy, sometimes 3 a day, 2 today.
Wow.
So I'm trying to get the word out. Trying I need, I was on Glenn Beck. Glenn Beck kept me on for almost an hour. He loved it. He was blown away. He says, "I think you've cracked the code. I absolutely think you're right." And of course I couldn't disagree with him because I know I know it's true.
Right.
Because it's God's timing. It's not my timing. I just did what God, uh, um, put the fear of God in me to do. And I did. I knew that if I didn't get this book written and get it out there and get the message out there, that I'd have to answer for it on my personal judgment.
Right.
And then he gave me my wonderful co-author, Ali Ghaffari, who I mentored Ali when he was in college back in the 90s. And he's a brilliant young man. And he became an F-18 fighter pilot and then taught at the Naval Academy. And Ali's just a real doer. So I wrote most of the book by hand. I resurrected my cursive writing because I wanted to be competent and write. Didn't help my spelling any, but that's part of my code.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
But so I wrote most of it by hand, and then Ali, between the two of us, Ali really sat down and helped me really put it together. Ali was the material powerhouse that actually made the book into a reality. Everything was up here. And I'd written it down in various forms, but we finally got together, and it was about 1,200 pages at first, but we couldn't get a publisher to publish it. 1,200 page books about that thing.
Yeah.
So we got it down to just under 600 pages, and they said that's fine, but maybe I'll write a sequel, because what plays really large in Tolkien's mythology, very heavy, very big, and people don't realize it, are the visions of Blessed Anne Catherine Emmerich.
Right.
And I'll show that. And if I write a sequel, that will be the focus of the sequel.
Okay. When you were saying that, Paul, I had the picture of the image in the of the Fellowship of the Ring of Bible Begging's writing, or that book that he was writing. That's why I pictured was you, and you're writing the book down on paper. That's why I pictured. So.
Oh, you mean like in the movie where he was writing in the red book? Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. Or Bilbo in the beginning, and
Bilbo, yeah.
Yeah. Well, we have to, little things, little skills, like even growing some of your own food, cooking for yourself. Even, God forbid somebody starts making their own clothes. Again, when I grew up, my mom made all of our clothes for 6 kids. We didn't have a television. But we had great parents, and my parents cultivated us very well. And so we have to make sure that we don't lose our humanity. The closer we get involved with the machine, the more we lose our humanity, and we lose track of our Savior, our God.
That's right. 100%. How are we doing on time? Are you okay? Any more questions? Okay,
Yeah,
awesome. So I know we talked about a lot of the characters so far, but there's been like the orcs, for example. What is the character?
Well, they're vices.
Gotcha.
Okay, we'll call them, they're not bad habits. Bad habits are bad habits. Like, for instance, the Sackville Baggins is the habit of theft. Okay.
Right.
And envy. Okay. Because they want Bag End. They want Bag End, and they're always stealing Bilbo's candlesticks and silverware and everything. But they get cured in the end, but you don't see that in the movie, because they took out the scouring of the Shire. But the the orcs are vices, always looking to drag us down and ruin us. Now the Uruk-hai, they're really interesting.
Okay.
Because Tolkien names the Uruk-hai after the first human city, Uruk. And it's the city, it's the sin of that comes from the too close proximation of too many people with bad influences on each other. And they become right out in, that's why the sun doesn't bother them. The sun burns the orcs because they're ashamed, because the light of the sun is the fallen light of the conscience. So it burns them and they're affected by the conscience. The Uruk-hai have no shame. They're right out in the open and they're proud. They're marching like a pride parade and they're proud of their vice and their vicious behavior and their sin. So this is what, then so Tolkien names him Uruk-hai because that's named for the first human city, because it's a city, it's a sin of that comes out of the cities, of people too close together and influencing each other. You've got all kinds of nasty that comes out of that, not least of which is homosexuality.
Oh, very good. I said, I think we that was the one I was like, okay, what are the orcs? Because that's something really bad.
Yeah,
and like
yeah.
you said, it's not bad habits, it's vices.
Yeah,
Vices.
and they change. It's interesting. They change as art, or there's three levels of these. Goblins are less deadly. They're like almost like childish vices. Okay, but then the orcs get a lot more serious and they're much more deadly. But then the Uruk-hai are just absolute no shame, no fear of the conscience at all, and they're the most deadly. So that just gives you the hierarchy of the vices that in the psychology. And of
Gotcha.
course, Gollum is probably is worse than all of them. He's intemperance.
Yeah.
So there's just no, and that's why Sam says that there's no saving him. He's gone. There's no saving him. He's a monster, and he is. But Frodo has sympathy on him because he's the other end of temperance. So they're both of the same species. They're just opposite ends of the same species. Of
Gotcha.
habit. Yeah.
Okay. Very good. Did we cover all the characters, Paul? Or
Oh no, I mean we didn't, but I mean it
Okay.
depends on on what you want to know. That for instance, men are reason, but they're at different levels of reason. The Idunadain, Aragorn, and company, very few of them left. They are high reason. That's contemplating the eternal, and that's why he's so close to the elves, because elves are faith. Okay, the elves in Middle Earth are faith in the material realm. The elves across the sea are faith in the immaterial realm, closer to Iluvatar, God. Okay. So then we've got men. The high reason are Aragorn and the Grey Riders, but Aragorn's the top. And then you've got practical reason, which is the Rohirrim, or otherwise known as common sense. And that's why their big hall has a thatched roof. It's a common hall. It's all about common sense. There's nothing glamorous about it. And that's also why Saruman wants to wipe them out, because Saruman is practical wisdom and he's trying to wipe out practical reason. Okay. Gotcha. And that's why he's always attacking the Rohirrim, the horsemen. So then we've got down from that, or just above that, is the fallen Gondorians. And Gondor is in the image of the Catholic Church and its place in Christendom. That's why Mordor is at its gate, like hell at the gates of heaven, or heaven at the gates of hell. And the church will not fail even against the gates of hell. And of course, we've got us in Gondor are the stewards now, not the kings, not the true kings, not true high reason. And that's kind of a reference that Tolkien, I think, really understood, that the papacy was going to go the way of the modernist, which they have with Francis, and now unfortunately Leo is just Francis 2.0. Francis is maybe even more dangerous because he's not as repulsive and vindictive. He's easier to like, but he's every bit as much the destroyer. So he's more dangerous, unfortunately. I think that people need to wake up and stop making excuses for Vatican II. Vatican II was it a legitimate council? Yes. Was it called for the right reason? Absolutely not. Was it a good council? Absolutely not. It was a dumpster fire. And we need to wake up and start realizing that we have to be true to Christ, not just to the successors of his apostles. Once his successors aren't true to Christ anymore, we have an obligation to follow Jesus Christ and the gospel, not some office, even if it's the Pope pulling us away from Christ. And that's exactly what they're doing. The only religion that they won't tolerate and call equal and call good is true Catholicism.
That is true.
It's the one religion that they have no use for. Yeah.
That is true. Yeah, I had a Protestant friend back in college, Paul, who asked me, like, well, Vatican II, what is that?
Yeah.
It was, I couldn't really answer him. I'm like, well, it was a council, and it met, and this stuff came out, and he's like, why? And
Yeah,
it's like,
well, it was a takeover. It was a very clever
right,
takeover by the modernists because Vatican I wasn't completed. It hadn't actually been allowed to be completed because there was too much conflict and war going on in the area. So it was never actually finalized and completed. And that was used as I believe, an opening for the modernists to come in. And what they did quite literally is they used Pius IX's syllabus of errors, which are condemned errors, a bunch of them, like 90 of them. And I swear they used that as their handbook. They turned them all into good things and they promoted all these errors. And that's exactly what they've done in the name of the Vatican II Council. It was a complete upside down reversal of Vatican I, and to promote modernism where it should have been to continue to root modernism out. I think honestly we need to go back to the oath against modernism that Pius X established, and then Paul VI, I think in 1969, did away with it. And we have to understand that at the heart of civilization, at the heart of humanity, is the Catholic Church, and at the heart of the Catholic Church is the true Mass, the sacrifice of the Mass, not this Novus Ordo man-made Protestantized version, but the true worship. And we need to bring that, and that's why it's under attack, and that's why the modernists are trying to squash it, because it's a threat to them.
right. Yeah, I mean, just back, it's not my home parish, Paul, but it's a parish next to us, so we've been tending to the parish a lot. They've been going back to facing east and facing the tabernacle, and it's truly, it's really more. I feel more reverence when I attend them. It's every second Sunday of the month, and it's really, of course. I mean, I was born way after Vatican II,
Of course, yeah.
so I know no different. But it's just like that's really reverent, and I think a lot of people was like, "Why are they doing that? Why are they doing that?" This is Vatican II.
Yeah.
But I mean, like you said, that's the true. I mean, it's not the Latin Mass, but it's going back to some of the aspects anyway of the Latin Mass.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, it's a Christ. The Latin Mass is a Christ-centered sacrifice, perpetuation of the sacrifice Christ on the cross, still offering the perfect sacrifice to the Father, with only one that's acceptable and good enough for him is his Son. And it's the real thing. It's not a symbol. I always tell the Protestants, if Christ meant that the Eucharist was just a symbol, then why did the 72 disciples leave at the Bread of Life discourse when he said, "My body is true food and my blood is true drink, and if you don't eat and drink of my blood, you'll not have eternal life"? And they said, "This is a hard saying," and they left. Well, all Jesus had to say was, "Oh, it's just a symbol. It's just a symbol." But they knew perfectly well he meant it for real. And that's why they left, leaving him with the 12. And he said, "Are you going to leave too?" And he said, "No, Lord, you have the words of eternal life. Where else can we go?" And so it is the real thing. And it's given for us out of love. And we need to be very aware of that. So it's a Christ-centered Mass. The Mass is, the priest doesn't have his back to us any more than I have my back to the people behind me. We're all facing the tabernacle. We're all facing Christ. Okay, and particularly when you've got the tabernacle right there, and the transubstantiation is happening right there in front of the tabernacle, you can really, your mind transcends the material realm, and you realize that what's in the tabernacle is the body of Christ, and it's Christ multiplying the loaves. and the fishes to feed the masses again, but this time it's with his own body. So it's happening right there within the presence of Christ in the tabernacle. And nobody's being, I get people, people come to our traditional Latin Mass once in a while, and I'll hear somebody say, I don't understand what he's saying. What, I can't understand him. And I heard somebody say, whisper to him, goes, he's not talking to you.
Right.
He's talking to Christ, and so they kind of caught on. But, it's, this is the 2,000-year-old holy sacrifice of the Mass. And for us to think that we're just going to change it to try to update it and modernize it is absolute blasphemy. And it's apostasy. And now the apostates and the heretics have risen to the very top of the church. And it's time that the laity need to really become much more vocal, and with charity, but much more vocal, much braver, more courage, and push back. And for the sake of our church, for the sake of humanity, for the sake of souls.
Right.
That's why Tolkien wrote the book. Tolkien wrote his mythology for the sake of souls.
Right.
Yeah.
That is true. That's definitely a cold crack right there, folks. That's totally true. Again, we're talking with Paul List. He's the author of Mount Doom. You can pick up a copy. We'll find out in just a little bit, so stay tuned for that. And again, Paul, I just want to thank you for coming on today, because it's very, again, a lot of people know the Lord of the Rings, but they don't know the cold cracking like you do. And it's very, very good to know, and very stuff that we really should know as Catholics. So I want to thank you for that again. So I do want to ask a couple more questions before we end, Paul. And I don't think we got to. I forgot the name of the tree, but the trees. What do they?
Oh, yeah. Thank you. He always gets left out. Treebeard, the Ents. Okay, the Ents are. You'll get a kick out of this. The Ents are taken right from Aristotle's De Anima on the soul, and they are the agent that brings potential into actual. And Aristotle called them the entelechies, and so Tolkien shortens it and calls them Ents. And the Hurons, the trees that they shepherd, Hurons are neurons. Their brain, their brain cells. Okay, so they're developing, and what their job is they're supposed to be growing and cultivating and developing the brain, and that's what Treebeard and Company do. So they're the entelechies, the agents of bringing potential into actual, and what they're most effective at doing is bringing dormant brain cells into active neurons of the brain and developing the brain. Yeah. It's funny. I got to tell you, I was down working with my co-author, and I was sleeping down in the basement on a mattress on a ping pong table, and it was early in the morning, and it was like somebody yelled really loud. I hadn't woken up yet, and I heard somebody yell, and it's probably my guardian angel in my ear. Hurons are neurons, really loud. And I went, okay, I got it. Hurons are neurons. Yeah, and the entelechies, the Ents are the entelechies, according to Aristotle. Yep.
Okay. Wow. Like I said, I knew there was a lot of the pieces to the.
Yeah. Nothing doesn't have meaning. It all has scholastic meaning. All the characters do. Yep.
That's true. Now I'm just trying to remember laying down, so next time you watch it, you can piece out together and really think of that. Awesome.
And that's how the young hobbits grow. They drink the draft from the Ent house, Treebeard's Ent house, and that's how they grow. And that's because they're hanging around with the entelechies, and the entelechies bring potential into actual.
Gotcha.
So the hobbits are growed, and that's how they develop in their virtues of prudence and justice.
Very good. Very good. That's very good. So I guess a couple final questions is, like, how long, after from, okay, this is God's hand on me, or what, to write the book on this, to publication, how long was that process?
Oh gosh. Over time it wasn't consistent. It was there were many spurts and hesitations. Sure. But probably I'll just say probably 10 years.
Okay.
from when I really started to really figure it out and started writing essays, and then finally got it together and got serious with the Lee. And then once I got serious with the Lee and we started putting it together, it was probably 3 years of that. I'd go down to Maryland where he lives and stay with him, or he'd come up here to Vermont and stay with me with his family. And we'd work for maybe 3 or 4 days, and then we'd have to go our separate ways and come back together with the first chance that we got. And also I did a lot of writing and taking photographs of my handwriting and then texting it to him, so he could actually transcribe it on the word processor. But it was quite the undertaking. There's no doubt about that. We tried to get it out. We kind of rushed to get it out because we were trying to get it out. It was published in 2022 in October. We were trying to get it out to coincide with Amazon's Rings of Power, because we thought maybe that would be fairly good. Boy, were we wrong.
Really?
It's terrible. And it didn't do us any good anyway. But, we probably should not have paid any attention to it. We were thinking, well, maybe, if we get the book out when there's this renewed interest in a Tolkien production, we'll see.
Right.
Yeah. But it gave us a date that we tried to get it finished by to finally get it done. So, yeah. You can get the book if anybody's interested in it. You can get the book, of course, on Amazon. It's got a 5-star rating right now. We've got, I think, 53 ratings and reviews, and 51 of those are 5-star. And or you could go to anybody that sells books, you can buy it. Or you can go to my website at readmountdoom.com and buy a copy there, and I'll sign it for you, and I'll put it in the mail for you.
Well, I'll put down that link in the show notes.
Okay.
I will put down the Amazon, but I guess I will too. But I'll put down your website for sure. And congratulations on that's really great.
Yeah. It's tough to get the word out. I'm so far beyond what anybody's ever considered with the mythology that people look at me like I'm kind of a freak.
Sure.
That's okay. I kind of am. So that's okay. I'm owning it. So I decided I'm gonna grow my Gandalf hair back, and I'll just I'll lean right into the the crazy look.
Well, I mean, that's just being a disciple of Christ, right? You're not made to fit in. So that's absolutely okay. I like I said, I've had a lot out of the blue questions, Paul, and I know I keep saying this is almost the last question, but I just saw this a couple of weeks ago. There's a movie coming out next year or 2 years about Gollum. Have you looked at that? Have you thought about that? Or
no, I really haven't. I've kind of had it with all these Hollywood or whatever productions. They don't know what they're doing. They're just it's just a money machine. And I gotta say too, as disappointed and upset as I am with the Curia in Rome and the papacy and the bishops in general these days have really let us down, mostly, except for a few exceptions. Really, really disappointed with the Tolkien Society. They've just gone full bore woke, and they've really, really traitorred J.R.R. Tolkien. J.R.R. Tolkien would be aghast if he saw it and realized what the Tolkien Society is doing with his legacy.
That is too bad.
It really is. Yeah. They're not what they used to be. That's for sure.
No.
Yeah.
Well, I can guarantee you this much: it's not gasping about this interview right now. Paul, I appreciate you coming on today and talking about your book. Real quickly again, what's your website? You can get the book at
readmountdoom.com.
Okay, good. We'll let you go. And again, Paul List, readmountdoom.com. Get the book there, and we'll have it in the show notes for you as well. And hopefully, Paul, or I should say, you're more than welcome to come back on anytime. So hopefully we'll have you on again.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Thanks, William.
You're welcome. Paul List, everyone. Go to sacrament, stay in state of grace, and God willing, next time, see you next week on Catholic Table Talk.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Catholic Table Talk podcast, where everything Catholic is on the table. Don't forget to subscribe to Catholic Table Talk on your favorite podcast platform to get new episodes delivered directly to you every Thursday at 9 a.m. Eastern.